They said my husband deserved better, and they were absolutely right. He deserved someone who wouldn't stay after everything he did. So I gave him exactly what he deserved, a clean, sharp stack of divorce papers. Take a moment and walk with me through my story. And if it stays with you even a little, don't forget to support the channel by hitting subscribe, liking the video, and sharing it with someone who might need it. My name is Erin. I'm 34, and I've worked as an ER nurse for over a decade. I married Jason when I was 23. He was everything I thought I wanted back then: funny, charming, strong. He worked in construction and could light up a room with his smile. But over time, that smile became rarer, and when it did show up, it wasn't for me. The first few years were good, but slowly, things began to change. Jason started pulling away. He'd come home late without calling, pick fights over small things, and make comments that cut deep, telling me I looked tired, that I never had time for him, that I was too much or not enough in the same breath. I tried brushing it off as stress. I worked long hours and thought maybe I had neglected him without realizing. Then one night, I came out of the bathroom and heard his mother on speakerphone. She said, "He deserves someone better than her." My heart dropped. I froze in the hallway, waiting to hear him defend me. But he didn't say a word. He just listened. Still, I told myself it was just her being overbearing. She never liked me much anyway. Jason told me not to worry about it, so I pushed it aside, until a few weeks later when I woke up at 2 a.m. and saw him texting someone named Maddie. I didn't say anything right away. I watched him quickly turn the screen over and mumble something about a buddy needing help. But it was the look in his eyes, guilt, maybe panic, that told me everything I needed to know. I asked him calmly, "Who's Maddie?" He didn't answer me. Instead, he scoffed, rolled his eyes, and said, "You're lucky I even came home tonight." That sentence, it hit harder than anything. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the way he said it. Like coming home to me was a favor. Like staying married to me was a burden. In that moment, something inside me cracked, not from sadness, but from clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining the distance or the coldness. I had been shrinking myself for someone who didn't even want to see me. And that was just the beginning. After that night, things didn't get better. Jason didn't apologize for what he said. Instead, he flipped the blame on me. He told me I was cold, that I was too focused on work, that I didn't make him feel wanted anymore. At first, I pushed back. I told him I was doing my best, that my job wasn't just a job, it saved lives. But the more he said it, the more I started to believe it. Maybe I was too focused on the hospital. Maybe I had stopped putting in effort at home. Maybe it really was me. So I started changing. I cut back my hours at the ER even though we needed the money. I came home early to cook him meals, fancy ones, with table settings and candles. I bought new clothes, did my hair, smiled more. I planned little surprise dates. One night, I even drove all the way to his job site with his favorite takeout, just to make him smile. And for a while, it seemed to work. He told me I looked pretty again. He kissed me on the forehead one morning and said, "This is more like it." I felt this flicker of hope, like maybe we were healing. But that weekend, he disappeared again. Said he had to help a friend out of town. Didn't answer his phone much. Came back Sunday night smelling like cologne I didn't wear. When I asked how the trip went, he said, "Why do you always sound so suspicious?" I didn't say anything else that night, but something in me was growing restless. A few days later, while doing laundry, I found a folded receipt in the pocket of his jeans. It was for dinner for two, at a fancy place in a city he swore he'd never been to. I sat with it for hours before bringing it up. When I did, I kept my voice steady. "Jason, what's this?" He barely looked. "A business dinner. That was for a client." I held up the paper again. "Then why was it signed with a heart?" He narrowed his eyes. "You're paranoid, Erin. You always jump to the worst conclusions. This is why I don't tell you things." I didn't answer. I just stared at him, wondering how long I'd been living in this twisted version of reality, where I kept changing everything about myself, while he just kept lying. And for the first time, I didn't feel sorry. I felt angry. After that night with the receipt, something shifted in me. I stopped trying to explain things to Jason. I stopped waiting for him to tell the truth. I realized I had to stop listening to his words and start watching his actions. So I did. Quietly, carefully. I began going through our shared bank account more closely. I saw strange charges, hotel stays in towns he didn't mention, gift purchases that weren't for me, and random cash withdrawals that didn't make sense. One night while he was in the shower, I looked through his truck. I don't know what I was hoping to find, but I did find something. Buried at the bottom of his metal toolbox, wrapped in an old rag, was a second phone. A burner. My hands shook as I turned it on. There were texts from Maddie. Not just flirty messages, but real conversations. Plans. Love notes. Pictures. And worst of all, talk about getting their own place. Jason wasn't just cheating. He had a whole second relationship. A second life. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I waited. The next evening, I made dinner, poured us both wine, and sat across from him like everything was normal. After he finished eating, I quietly said, "I know about the second phone." He froze. For just a second. Then he laughed. A cold, empty laugh. "Of course you went snooping," he said. "You can't help yourself." I didn't say anything. Just looked at him. Calm. Steady. Then he exploded. "You're suffocating me, Air. You think you're the victim, but you don't see what it's like living with someone like, always watching, always working, always judging. Maddie gets me. You just get in the way." He grabbed his keys and left. Just like that. No apology. No guilt. Like I was the one who had betrayed him. I sat there in silence for a long time before I called Chloe. I didn't even make it through the first sentence before I broke down crying. She was at my house in 10 minutes, holding me like the pieces of me might fall apart. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't ask why I waited this long. She just sat with me, holding my hand while I cried. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Let's stop surviving him, Air. Let's start planning your way out." That night, we opened my laptop, poured 2 glasses of cheap wine, and began building a quiet, careful plan. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to walk out of this mess with my head high, after making sure he finally faced the consequences. After Jason walked out, I expected space. Silence. But instead, I got messages. Lots of them. Not from him, but from his family. His sister messaged me first. "He's been so unhappy, Aaron. Maybe it's time to let him go." Then his aunt chimed in. "You always put work before him. Men need to feel wanted." But the one that really broke something inside me came from his mother. "You never gave him what he needed. He deserves someone who really sees him." I stared at that text for a long time, trying to remember the nights I'd stayed up waiting, the meals I'd cooked, the tears I'd swallowed just to keep the peace. Somehow, they had all chosen to believe his version. And it didn't matter what the truth was. He had painted me as cold, distant, ungrateful. So, I played the part. I kept my voice steady when I responded with short, polite messages. I didn't defend myself. I didn't try to explain. I let them believe whatever they wanted. But in public, I kept up the act. When Jason invited me to his cousin's birthday dinner, I went. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. I needed them to see that I wasn't falling apart, that I wasn't the bitter wife they imagined. I wore a navy blue dress, smiled, laughed at appropriate moments, and helped his grandmother to her seat. Then Jason walked in with Maddie. He introduced her as a friend from work. Just like that. At a family dinner. In front of everyone. My hands clenched around the stem of my wine glass. But my smile didn't falter. I clinked glasses with his cousin, leaned over to compliment the cake, and after a polite toast, I excused myself to the bathroom. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood in front of the mirror, fixed my lipstick, and whispered to myself, "He has no idea what's coming." Because what they didn't know was that I already had a lawyer. We'd been working quietly for weeks, collecting documents, listing assets, mapping out a clean exit. I wasn't just walking away. I was making sure I'd never have to look back. Let them believe I was weak. Let them think Maddie was his savior. I was done arguing. I was done explaining. Now, I was just preparing. The days after that family dinner were the calmest I had felt in months. Not because things were better, they weren't, but because I finally had a plan. While Jason went about his life like nothing had changed, I was quietly preparing. I started gathering everything I could: bank records, pay stubs, credit card statements, emails. I copied property deeds from the filing cabinet he thought I never opened. I took screenshots of every text and voicemail he left me. The angry ones, the manipulative ones, the ones where he slipped and called Maddie by name. Every night after work, I came home, made dinner, and sat at the kitchen table going over documents like it was a homework assignment. I wasn't just leaving. I was building an airtight case. Then I found something that pushed me over the edge. A bill came in with my name on it, a credit card I didn't remember applying for. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but when I called the company, they confirmed everything. Jason had opened the card using my information, and he'd used it to buy Maddie jewelry. Hundreds of dollars charged to my name. I felt sick. I showed the statement to Chloe, and she stared at it like it was a personal insult. Then she looked me in the eye and said, "Girl, we're not taking the high road. We're paving our own damn road, with fire." That night, I opened my own checking account. I rerouted my direct deposit, changed the passwords to everything, and rewrote my will. I changed my beneficiaries, listed Chloe as my emergency contact, and even filed paperwork to remove Jason's name from anything tied to my medical or legal decisions. I didn't tell him a word. Not even when he came home smelling like whiskey and perfume and dropped onto the couch like he owned the place. He mumbled something about drinks with Maddie and passed out with his shoes still on. I stood in the hallway and watched him. This man I had loved for over a decade. A man who once held my hand during a hospital shift change, who once told me I was his whole world. Now he was just a stranger sleeping in my house, paid for with my work, using my name to treat another woman like a queen. But I didn't feel rage anymore, just calm. It was a strange peace. Not the soft kind, but the kind that settles over you right before a storm breaks loose. Because I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was almost ready to end this on my terms, quietly, cleanly, completely. And he had no idea. It happened on a Thursday. Jason thought it was just another day, but for me, it was the day. He came home after work to find the house quiet, too quiet. No dinner cooking, no lights on, no familiar sound of me moving around. Just stillness. On the kitchen table sat a single folder. Inside were the divorce papers, a breakdown of our joint finances, copies of every charge he made in my name, and a spreadsheet that mapped out everything I knew. Every motel, every gift, every lie. On top of the folder was a small sticky note. I'd written it in calm, steady handwriting. You wanted better. I agree. That was it. No dramatic confrontation. No screaming match. Just truth, laid out like a closing statement. I was already gone. I'd moved into a small apartment Chloe helped me find. My clothes, my dog, my documents. Everything important had been moved quietly over the last few days. I even canceled his access to the streaming accounts. Petty maybe, but it made me smile. Jason called my phone 17 times that night. I didn't answer once. Eventually, I blocked his number. The next day, while I was working a double shift at the hospital, his mother showed up. She stormed in, eyes wild, demanding to speak with me. She started yelling about how I was destroying the family, how I had blindsided her son. I didn't say a word. I just called security. They walked her out as she screamed over her shoulder, "You'll regret this, Aaron." But I didn't. Not for 1 second. That night, Chloe came over. We sat on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by unopened boxes and mismatched furniture. She brought boxed wine, and we toasted with cheap plastic cups. "To freedom," she said. "To never shrinking myself again," I replied. We laughed until we cried. Not because we were sad, but because it was finally over. No more guessing. No more waiting for the truth. No more playing a role just to keep the peace. I was free, and he was finally getting exactly what he deserved. The fallout came faster than even I expected. A week after I left, I sent an envelope to Jason's boss. Inside were carefully printed documents. Proof of Jason using company funds to wine and dine Maddie. Expensive dinners, hotel stays, gifts. All charged to a corporate card. All tracked and time-stamped. I didn't hear anything right away, but 2 days later, Jason called me from a new number. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail full of anger, cursing me out for ruining his life. It was the first and last voicemail I saved, not for revenge, but as a reminder. Chloe listened to it with me and just shook her head. Poor baby didn't think actions had consequences. Turns out, his boss didn't take kindly to the misuse of company funds. Jason was fired, on the spot. No warning, no second chances. And Maddie, she didn't stick around for the fallout. Once she realized he didn't have a steady income, that the nice dinners and gifts weren't coming back, she vanished. Just blocked him and moved on. No goodbye. No explanation. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Jason's family, so quick to blame me before, went silent. Not a single text, not a single call. No one came rushing to his defense anymore, except his sister, Rachel. She messaged me late one night. "I'm sorry. I didn't know the whole story. You didn't deserve what he did to you." I didn't reply, but I appreciated the message. A small sliver of truth in a sea of silence. Meanwhile, my lawyer did exactly what I needed him to. We fought clean, but we fought smart. I got the house, the dog, and half of everything. Every asset, every account. Jason didn't even try to contest most of it. I think he knew he'd lose. I had too much proof. When the final court documents arrived, I felt lighter. Like something invisible had been lifted off my chest. Chloe and I celebrated again. This time with real wine, real glasses, and pizza straight out of the box. "Still think he deserved better?" she asked, raising her glass. I laughed. Oh, he got what he deserved. Exactly that. Last I heard, Jason was living in his buddy's garage. Not a guest house. A literal garage. No heating, no privacy. Just a mattress and regret. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach out. I didn't need to. He had made his choices. And now he was living with them. And me? I was finally living without him. Once the divorce was final and the dust settled, I stepped back into my life, this time on my terms. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital and returned to full-time work. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't worried about rushing home to cook for someone who wouldn't appreciate it. My patients smiled when they saw me again. My coworkers noticed a change, too. I stood taller. I laughed more. I felt like myself again. At home, I started learning how to cook for one. Not elaborate meals to win anyone's approval, just simple, nourishing food that made me feel good. I poured a glass of wine when I felt like it. I played music while chopping vegetables. I burned a few things along the way, but I smiled through it. I also started therapy. It wasn't easy at first. Talking about the years I spent feeling small, apologizing for things I didn't do, constantly questioning my own feelings. It cracked me open in ways I didn't expect. But little by little, I unpacked it all. One session, I remembered my 30th birthday. I had saved up to buy Jason a new watch the year before. When it came time for my birthday, he handed me a half-wrapped box of drugstore perfume and said, "Didn't have time to do much this year. You're not picky, right?" I smiled through it then, but I cried in the bathroom later that night. Now, for years later, I walked into a boutique, picked out a necklace I had been eyeing for months, and said, "Wrap it up. It's for me." I didn't need anyone else to make me feel special. I had finally learned how to do it myself. I also joined a dance class, just one night a week. No one there knew my story. No one asked. I stumbled through the first few sessions, offbeat and awkward, but it didn't matter. For 1 hour every Tuesday night, I danced without worrying how I looked or who was watching. No one was watching, and I had never felt freer. There was no finish line, no big transformation moment, just a quiet, steady rebuilding of the woman I had buried under years of fear, guilt, and exhaustion. I wasn't waiting for happiness anymore. I was creating it, step by step, one dance move at a time. It had been months since I last saw Jason. Life had finally settled into something calm, steady, and mine. I didn't think about him much anymore. Honestly, I didn't expect to see him again at all. But then I turned down the frozen foods aisle at the grocery store, and there he was, standing by the ice cream, looking lost. He looked different. His hair was longer, messier. He'd put on weight, not in a comfortable way, but in the way stress piles up on a person. His clothes were wrinkled, and he had that tired, worn-out look that used to live in my eyes. For a second, he didn't recognize me. I guess I had changed, too. My hair was lighter now. I was wearing a simple sundress and sneakers, no makeup, but I felt good. I looked good. When our eyes finally met, he blinked like he'd seen a ghost. "Aaron," he said, walking slowly toward me. I gave a polite smile. "Jason." He looked me up and down, like he wasn't sure how to process what he was seeing. Then, almost awkwardly, he said, "You look really good." I nodded. "Thanks." "I know." He laughed, a little uncomfortable, like he expected me to deflect or downplay it. But I didn't. I didn't need to. There was a pause, then he tilted his head. "So, is there someone new?" I met his eyes and didn't even hesitate. "Yeah, me." That hit him harder than anything I could have said. He blinked again, like he didn't quite understand. I could have explained it. Could have said I was in therapy, dancing again, smiling without effort. That I had rediscovered myself in the silence he left behind. But I didn't know him that, so I just gave him one last smile. Soft, simple, and done. Then I turned around and walked away. I didn't look back. Not once. I didn't need to see his reaction. I didn't need to wonder what he felt. For the first time in years, his feelings weren't mine to carry. He could keep them. I walked to the checkout with a cart full of fresh food, flowers, and a bottle of wine for myself. Paid in cash. Smiled at the cashier. Drove home with the windows down and music playing. That run-in could have rattled me once. But not anymore. Because that girl who begged for love? Who tiptoed around someone else's moods? She was long gone. And the woman in her place? She was just getting started. A few weeks after I ran into Jason at the store, a card showed up in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in shaky handwriting I recognized right away, his mother's. I opened it out of curiosity, not hope. Inside, in stiff cursive, she wrote, "We were wrong about you. I see that now. I'm sorry for the things I said." I stared at the words for a few seconds, waiting to feel something. Relief? Vindication? Closure? But there was nothing, just an odd emptiness. Like hearing an apology long after the damage has been done and repaired without the other person. I walked over to the trash can and dropped the card in without another thought. Later that night, I sat with my journal, the same one I started the day Jason walked out. I flipped through the pages full of pain, questions, and slow healing. Then I wrote, "He did deserve better, but so did I." And I finally gave it to both of us. I closed the book and smiled to myself. The truth is, closure didn't come in the way people talk about. There was no dramatic moment, no perfect apology, no scene where everything suddenly made sense. It was quiet, slow, and sometimes lonely. But it was real. Now my life is simple, but full. I have my job at the hospital. I have Chloe, who still texts me weekly dance memes. I have my little apartment, my dog who sleeps at the foot of my bed, and peace in places I never expected to find it. This morning, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea in hand. The sun rose gently over the trees, casting soft light across the yard. Nothing dramatic. No grand moment. Just peace. The dog lay curled beside me, snoring softly. I wasn't thinking about the past or Jason or his mother's too-late apology. I wasn't angry. I was just done. I looked out over the quiet street, and felt something settle deep in my chest. Something steady, something whole. And that's when I knew. I gave him what he deserved. And finally, I gave myself what I never thought I could. Peace. What do you think? Was Erin right to walk away and rebuild her life on her own terms? Or should she have fought a little longer to save her marriage? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if these kinds of stories speak to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new one.